The steel of my blade felt colder than usual against the small of my back as I crouched in the damp undergrowth of the Blackwood Border. In my world, you are taught two things from the moment you can walk: how to breathe without making a sound, and how to kill a monster without feeling a shred of remorse. My name is Elara, and I am the youngest captain of the Silver Order, a lineage of hunters whose only purpose is to keep the human settlements safe from the beasts that wear men's faces. The scent of pine and wet earth was thick tonight, but beneath it was the iron-heavy stench of musk and ancient power. A wolf was near. Not just any wolf, but a scout for the Obsidian Pack. For decades, the Silver Order and the Obsidian Pack had maintained a blood-stained stalemate, in a border drawn in the dirt that neither side dared to cross without a death warrant. But tonight, the rumors were true. The alphas were moving. I adjusted my grip on my silver-etched dagger, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum in my ears. I didn't believe in the fairy tales the elders told, the stories about fated mates, the soul bond that could supposedly bridge the gap between hunter and prey. To me, it was propaganda used to keep us soft. A wolf was a predator, and I was the shield. I had seen the aftermath of their raids. I had seen the claw marks on the doors of those who couldn't lock them fast enough. My father had died with a silver pike in his hand and a snarl on his lips, defending the very ground I stood on now. The Order was my family, my religion, and my cage. Suddenly, the shadows to my left shifted. It wasn't the clumsy rustle of a deer or the flight of a startled bird. It was the deliberate, heavy silence of something that knew it owned the dark. My pulse spiked, not with fear, but with the cold, calculated thrill of the hunt. I stayed low, my boots sinking into the peat, letting my eyes adjust to the silver-blue filtering of the moon through the canopy. I lunged my blade lead edge out, aiming for the soft tissue of the throat where the fur is thinnest and the lifeblood is closest to the surface. Metal met metal. I didn't hit fur. I hit a bracer of hardened leather and steel. A hand, massive and calloused, gripped my wrist with the strength of a vice. I was yanked forward, my chest slamming into a wall of solid muscle that felt like living granite. I looked up, expecting the yellow, vacant eyes of a beast lost to its own hunger. Instead, I found a pair of piercing, molten gold eyes set in a face of rugged, devastating royalty. This was no scout. This was Kaelen, the alpha of the Obsidian Pack, the man whose name was used to frighten our recruits into staying awake on watch. He didn't snarl. He didn't bite. He stared at me with a look of such profound shock that his grip on my wrist actually faltered for a fraction of a second. In that moment, a jolt of electricity, violent and searing, tore through my skin where he touched me. It wasn't pain. It was a recognition that reached into the very marrow of my bones, a hum that resonated in my DNA as if two halves of a broken circuit had finally clicked back together. My wolf sense, the dormant part of the human soul the Order told us was a myth or a curse, screamed one word that echoed in the silence of my mind. Mine. "A hunter," Kaelen whispered, his voice a low vibration that seemed to rattle my ribcage and settle deep in my lungs. They sent a child of the Order to be my ending, and instead, the moon gave me my beginning. I kicked him hard in the shin and twisted away, my breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to mist in the freezing air. My skin felt like it was on fire, the place where he had touched me glowing with an invisible heat. "Stay back, monster," I spat, though my voice betrayed me with a slight tremor I couldn't suppress. I reached for my belt, drawing a second dagger, this one coated in the extract of aconite. He stood his ground, making no move to shift or attack. He didn't even drop into a defensive stance. He simply watched me with a terrifyingly calm intensity, as if he were memorizing the way my breath hitched in my throat. "You felt it, Elara," he said, knowing my name before I'd even spoken it, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 years of pack history. "The bond doesn't care about your silver or my bloodlust. It doesn't care about the wars of our fathers, or the borders we drew in blood. It has decided. I raised my heavy-duty crossbow, the bolt tipped with pure, refined silver, and blessed by the Order's high priest, aimed directly at his heart. If you take one more step, I'll prove that the bond isn't stronger than a bolt to the chest. I am a captain of the Silver Order, Kaelen. I don't have a soulmate. I have a mission. He smiled then, a dark, tragic twist of the lips that made my stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with combat. Then shoot. If I am to die tonight, I would rather it be by the hand of the woman who was written in the stars to rule by my side. It would be a poetic end for a king who has spent his life waiting for a ghost. My finger twitched on the trigger. Everything I had been taught told me to fire. My instructors, my brothers in arms, the very walls of the citadel, they all demanded his blood. He was the ultimate threat. But the air between us was thick with a magnetic pull so strong it felt like a physical weight, pulling my center of gravity toward him. I could see the pulse jumping in his neck. I could smell the scent of wood smoke and rain clinging to his cloak. I couldn't do it. My hands, which had never shaken in the face of a charging beast, were trembling. I lowered the weapon, my mind racing with the terrifying realization that my life as I knew it was over. If the Order found out I had encountered an alpha and let him live, worse, if they realized I felt the pull, they wouldn't just strip my rank. They would label me a heretic and execute me in the public square. "The Order is coming, Kaelen," I hissed, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming for me to run in the opposite direction. "They aren't just patrolling. They have a full battalion moving through the Eastern Pass. They found out about your meeting with the North Pack. It's not a skirmish. It's an ambush. They have silver gas canisters and heavy artillery. They mean to wipe you out tonight." He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing as he processed the information. "And why are you telling me this, little hunter? Why save the monster you were born to kill? Is this part of your trap?" I shook my head, frustrated by the tears of confusion pricking my eyes. "Because if you die, I think a part of my own spirit dies too. I don't understand it, and I hate it, but I'm not ready to find out if the legends are true. If you fall, I fall. And I've always been a survivor." The sound of horns echoed through the trees, distant but approaching fast, the sharp, metallic blast of the Silver Order's call to arms. They were close. The torches would be visible within minutes. Kaelen reached out, his hand hovering inches from my face, waiting for permission in a gesture that was shockingly human for a creature of legend. I didn't pull away. When his fingers finally brushed my cheek, the world around us, the war, the cold, the impending death, seemed to fade into insignificance. His skin was scorching, and where he touched me, the chaos in my head fell silent. "Come with me," he urged, his voice urgent as the horns grew louder. "To the Order, you are now a traitor. They will see the way you look at me, and they will know. You cannot go back to a cage when you were born for the sky. To them, you are a tool. To me, you are a queen. Help me stop this war before there's nothing left to rule but ashes." I looked back toward the flickering torches of my people, the only world I had ever known. A world of rules and shadows and hate. Then I looked back into the molten gold eyes of my enemy, the man who promised a dangerous, unknown freedom. I took his hand, his fingers locking firmly with mine, as we vanished into the shadows of the deeper forest, leaving the Silver Order to find nothing but an empty clearing and a discarded crossbow. I knew I wasn't just crossing a border. I was starting a revolution. The hunter had joined the pack, and the moon was just beginning to rise on a rain that would change the world forever. We ran through the thicket, the wind whipping past us, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't hunting. I was home. I could hear the shouts of my former comrades behind us, their voices jagged with confusion and anger. "Elara, Captain!" they called, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. To look back was to invite the guilt of 1,000 years of tradition to weigh me down. Kaelen's grip was steady, pulling me through terrain that should have been impassable in the dark. He moved with a grace that was impossible for a human, his body intuitive to the rhythm of the forest. We reached a high ridge overlooking the valley where the Obsidian Pack made their home. It wasn't the cave system or the primitive dens the Order described in their textbooks. It was a sprawling, ancient stone fortress built into the side of the mountain, glowing with the soft light of hearth fires. "They won't follow us here," Kaelen said, finally stopping and turning to face me. "Not tonight. My warriors are already alerted. Your people will find the pass blocked by more than just shadows." I leaned against a cedar tree, my breath finally evening out. "You don't understand the Order," I warned him. "They won't stop. They'll see my disappearance as a kidnapping. They'll use it as an excuse to burn this entire mountain range. My commander, General Vance, doesn't believe in mercy. He believes in extinction." Kaelen stepped closer, his presence enveloping me. "Then we give them a reason to fear the moon again. But first, Elara, you need to understand what you are. You aren't just a girl with a blade. You carry the mark of the Luna, a lineage that was thought to be purged during the Great Cleansing. That is why you could see me. That is why the silver doesn't burn you the way it should." I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had been trained to kill his kind. Everything I knew was a lie. I wasn't a protector of humanity. I was a bridge between two worlds that had forgotten how to speak to one another. "What happens now?" I asked, the weight of the future settling on my shoulders. Kaelen reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch now gentle, almost reverent. "Now," he whispered, "we prepare for a war to end all wars. And then, we build a world where hunters and wolves no longer have to hide in the dark." The howl of 100 wolves rose from the valley below, a sound of greeting, a sound of defiance. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I didn't reach for my sword. I reached for him. The night deepened, and with it, the reality of my choice began to settle like frost over the landscape. Every step deeper into the Obsidian territory felt like a betrayal of the ancestors whose names were carved into the stones of the citadel. I thought of my bunk, the smell of oil and whetstone, the sterile discipline of the morning drills. It was a life of certainty. Here, in the heart of the wild, there was only the thrumming heat of the bond and the unpredictable shadow of the Alpha beside me, and we reached the gates of the fortress. Massive timbers reinforced with iron and inscribed with runes that pulsed with a faint amber light. The guards didn't snarl as we approached. They dropped to one knee, their heads bowed in a synchronization that spoke of deep, ancestral loyalty. They weren't bowing to Kaelen alone. Their eyes flickered to me, wide with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "They know," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "They know what I am before I even knew it myself." Kaelen didn't look at them. His focus remained entirely on me, a tether in the storm. "They feel the shift in the wind, Elara. The Pack has waited generations for the Luna to return. To them, you are a miracle. To the Order, you are a ghost. But to me, you are the only thing that makes this crown worth wearing." We entered the Great Hall, a space carved from the living rock of the mountain, where a massive fire roared in a central pit. The warmth was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the biting cold of the border. Women in furs and men with scarred arms paused in their work, the air suddenly still. I felt the urge to reach for my dagger, the muscle memory of a hunter trapped in a den of wolves. My fingers brushed the hilt, but Kaelen's hand moved over mine, stopping the motion. "You are safe here," he said softly, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. The first person to raise a hand against her answers to my claws. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes the color of slate stepped forward. She was the pack healer, the keeper of lore. She approached me slowly, her gaze scanning the Silver Order insignia on my cloak with a grimace. "A hunter's garb," she remarked, her voice like grinding stones. "You bring the scent of death into this hall, girl." I stood tall, squaring my shoulders. I bring the truth of what's coming, I countered. The Order isn't just patrolling. They have mobilized. If you spend your time judging my clothes instead of sharpening your teeth, you won't have a hall to stand in by sunrise. The woman paused, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. She has the fire, she muttered to Kaelen. The moonfire. I thought it had flickered out forever. Kaelen led me to a raised dais, but instead of sitting, he stood beside me, facing his people. The Silver Order has grown arrogant in their walls of stone, he announced, his voice booming. But they think we are beasts to be culled. They think they can take our lands and our lives without consequence. But they have forgotten that the moon doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. And tonight, it has returned its soul to the pack. The hall erupted in a rhythmic pounding of fists against tables, a sound like an approaching landslide. I looked out at the faces, the children, the elderly, the warriors, and I realized they weren't the monsters I had been taught to hate. They were a people under siege, just like the villagers I had sworn to protect. The line between us and them began to blur until it vanished entirely. Later that night, in the quiet of the Alpha's private chambers, I stood on a balcony overlooking the jagged peaks of the Blackwood Range. The torches of the Silver Order were still visible in the distance, aimed tiny pinpricks of light in the sea of black. They looked so small from up here. I used to think those lights were the only thing standing between the world and total darkness, I said as Kaelen stepped out behind me. He didn't say anything at first, simply standing close enough that I could feel the radiant heat of his body. Light can guide, or it can blind, he eventually replied. The Order chose to blind. They taught you to see the world in black and white, so you wouldn't notice the beauty in the gray. I turned to him, the bond pulling at my chest. They'll come for me, Kaelen. Vance won't let a captain go. He'll think I have secrets, and I do. I know their supply routes, their weak points, their fears. Kaelen took my face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the line of my jaw. Then we use those secrets, not to destroy them, but to force a peace. I don't want a mountain of human corpses, Elara. I want my people to walk in the sun without being hunted. If that means we have to break the Order to fix the world, then we break it together. I leaned into his touch, the last of my resistance crumbling. The fated bond wasn't a chain. It was a key. It had unlocked a version of myself I never knew existed, a version that wasn't defined by the silver I carried or the orders I followed. I was trained to kill you, I whispered. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. And I was born to love you. Let's see which of us is better at our job. As the first rays of dawn began to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold, I knew the battle was coming. The Silver Order would march. The forest would scream. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was the dark, and I was the light, and I was exactly where I was meant to be. The war for the moon had begun, and I was no longer the hunter. I was the heart of the pack. Like this story, to help more readers find the legend, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new epic saga of romance and adventure.